In the African nation of Nigeria, millions of Christians are persecuted by Islamic terror groups.
Nigeria has happened to me. Nigeria has happened to me. As I speak with you now, my uncle has been kidnapped by Fulani terrorists in Edo State.
How can an offense that carry death penalty, a judge reduce it to 20 years in prison?
Now, everybody in this vehicle have been kidnapped. Everybody in this vehicle have been kidnapped.
This week on Christian World News, President Trump issues a warning to Nigeria. Stop Islamic terror groups from killing Christians, or we might send in the U.S. military.
Christianity is facing an existential threat in Nigeria. Thousands and thousands of Christians are being killed. Radical Islamists are responsible for this mass slaughter. I am hereby making Nigeria a country of particular concern. That's a legal definition.
I'd love to ask him questions at a time like this. So if we come here and we do politics of bow and go, this is not a period we should say bow and go. Even Donald Trump is on our neck.
They once said you could worship in peace here. You could send your children to school. You could farm your land and sleep under a sky that didn't fear gunfire. But today, the churches are silent at dawn. Worship becomes dangerous. This is the reality of certain regions in Nigeria. Some might argue it may become the reality of the whole Nigeria. And this is what we are here to discuss today. There are so many nuances to this discussion in Nigeria, such as political power and control, Western power, interference and influence, and many more. What we are discussing today is one part that is least discussed and might be the most important. Welcome to Deep Dive into Islam and Jihad in Nigeria. In November 2025, a storm of violence swept across states. Kebbi, Niger, Kwara, school kidnappings, church raids, terrified villages, missing children, grieving families. At Maga, Kebbi State, gunmen struck the government girls' comprehensive secondary school at dawn, around 3 a.m., shooting the vice principal and abducting 25 female students from their dormitories. One managed to escape that morning. The rest vanished. Just days later, armed men attacked St. Mary's Catholic School in Papiri, Agwara local government area, Niger State. More than 200 students, 303 by some counts, and 12 teachers were taken hostage. 50 managed to escape. Hundreds remain missing as families wait in agony. Meanwhile, in Kwara State, worshippers in a service at Christ Apostolic Church, Iruku town, were attacked by gunmen. 2 people were killed, dozens abducted, including the pastor. The rest fled in panic as bullets rang out. Within days, the country faced its third traumatic event: school children disappearing. Communities reeled. Parents wept. Survivors whispered about terror. And the world looked on. Some demanded action. Others issued warnings. And all of these cases mentioned are just a few of the heartbreaking killings, kidnapping, and other security-related issues that has occurred in the country so far. The international response was swift. Human rights groups called for rescue and protection of students. Global media spotlighted in Nigeria's worsening crisis. The US government, under President Donald Trump, declared Nigeria a country of particular concern, threatened possible military intervention if violence against Christians continued. At home, the government, led by Bola Ahmed Tinubu, responded. National security emergency declared, schools closed in vulnerable states, mass recruitment of police and army ordered. But for many Nigerians, the fear had already taken root. Before Nigeria, before Sokoto, before bandits, Boko Haram, or the mass kidnappings of schoolgirls, there was a story older than every border on the African map. A story of faith, a story of empire, a story of war and interpretation. What Nigeria faces in 2025, the killings, the abductions, the bombings, the displacement of millions, is not an isolated tragedy. It is an echo, a long echo of a history that began 1,400 years ago. The word jihad does not mean holy war but struggle or striving. In classical Islamic sources, it encompassed spiritual striving, inner moral struggle, as well as communal defense. Over time, rulers and empires invoked it to justify political and military ambitions. You can't totally understand Islam in today's world without understanding the 3 stages of jihad. With an understanding of these 3 stages of jihad, you will know why some Muslims promote peace and religious tolerance while some promote violence. There are 3 stages in the call to jihad depending on the status of Muslims in a society. Stage 1. Stealth jihad. When Muslims are outnumbered and can't win a physical confrontation with non-Muslims, they are commanded to promote peace with non-Muslims and preach a message of tolerance. A good chapter from the Quran that represents this is the Surah 109, which says, "O unbelievers, I do not serve that which you serve, nor do you serve him whom I serve. Nor am I going to serve that which you serve, nor are you going to serve him whom I serve. You shall have your religion, and I shall have my religion." One of the key features of stage 1 is taqiyya, which means concealing Islam's true intentions in order to protect the Muslim community. This made clear in Surah 3:28. "Let not the believers take disbelievers for their friends in preference to believers. Whoso doeth that hath no connection with Allah, unless it be that ye but guard yourselves against them, taking as it were security." Muslims are not allowed to be friends with non-Muslims unless they are outnumbered and they feel like they're in danger from a stronger opponent. Long story short, they are told to pretend to be friendly. One of Islam's greatest scholars, Ibn Kathir, comments, "In this case, such believers are allowed to show friendship outwardly, but never inwardly." Another key feature of stage 1 is victim status. Muslims like to pretend that Muhammad and his followers were persecuted in Mecca simply because they are Muslims. But the real truth is that the pagans of Mecca only got angry when Muhammad started mocking and attacking their belief and religion. Nobody had any issue with Muhammad preaching Islam. When people heard Muslims were being mistreated, they rushed to Muhammad's aid. The Christians of Abyssinia, the Jews of Medina, and various pagan groups all agreed one time or another to protect Muslims from their so-called persecutor in Mecca. These people thought they were doing a good thing, but didn't know that the message of the Quran will soon change once Muhammad and his followers had formed enough alliances. And this leads us to stage 2 of jihad. Stage 2, defensive jihad. When there are enough Muslims and resources to defend the Islamic community from attacks, persecution, or critics, Muslims are called to engage in defensive jihad, fighting unbelievers who pose a physical or intellectual threat to Islam. Surah 22 verses 39 to 40 says, "Permission to fight is given to those upon whom war is made because they are oppressed, and most surely Allah is well able to assist them, those who have been expelled from their homes without a just cause except that they say, 'Our Lord is Allah.'" One of the primary tactics of stage 2 is terrorism. The people of Mecca depended on the caravan trade for their survival, and then Muhammad started attacking the Meccan caravans. Muslims launched 7 attacks against the caravans, and the Meccans never retaliated. During the 7th attack, Muslims killed a man and took the goods and some captives as well. The only problem was this happened during the holy month when everyone agreed not to fight. Muhammad was worried about this at first, but then he received Surah 2:17, which says, "They questioned thee, O Muhammad, with regard to warfare in the sacred month. Say, warfare therein is a great transgression, but to turn men from the way of Allah and to disbelieve in Him and in the inviolable place of worship, and to expel His people thence, is a greater transgression with Allah. For persecution is worse than killing." The Meccans had been trying to avoid war, But the Muslims won't stop attacking the caravans, which was the Meccans' major trade and source of living. The pagan tribe sent an army to protect the next caravan. Muslims attacked and defeated the Meccans at what became the Battle of Mada. The first real battle between Muslims and non-Muslims was as a result of non-Muslims trying to protect themselves from Muslims terrorizing their trade routes. It wasn't long for the people that agreed to protect Muhammad to realize they made a big mistake. But they also realized once you agree to support Muhammad, you don't get to change your mind. Anything other than perfect allegiance to Muhammad becomes grounds for expulsion, seizing of properties, enslavement, or annihilation. Non-Muslims also learned no matter how much they disagree with Muhammad's campaign of violence, they had to keep their mouths shut. Muhammad began ordering the assassination of critics during stage 2. People who said anything against Muhammad were brutally murdered. The people of Medina, the very people who had invited Muslims into their city, saw their rights disappearing in the name of Allah. According to Muslims, criticizing Islam is seen as an attack. Backing off Muhammad's alliance after you figure out Muhammad's true intentions also counts as an attack, and Muslims are advised to respond to these attacks with physical violence and terrorism. Stage 3. Offensive Jihad. When Muslims establish a majority and achieve political power in an area, they are commanded to begin offensive jihad. Once Muhammad had Mecca and Arabia under his control, the message of the Quran changes again. Suddenly, Muslims were not just told to fight against aggressors. They were commanded to fight non-Muslims simply because they are non-Muslims. The Quran say, Quran 9:73, O Prophet, strive hard against the unbelievers and the hypocrites and be unyielding to them. Quran 9:123. O you who believe, fight those of the unbelievers who are near to you and let them find in you hardness. If Muslims have the military strength to expand their political power and to violently dominate non-Muslims, the Quran commands them to do so. In the offensive jihad stage, Muslims can also expel Christians and Jews from lands they have been living in for centuries in order to keep certain areas that are important to the Muslims pure. Sahih Muslim 4366 says, I will expel the Jews and Christians from the Arabian Peninsula and will not leave any but Muslims. Just after the death of Prophet Muhammad in 632 AD, the early caliphates expanded far beyond Arabia, reaching North Africa, Persia, the Levant, and beyond. These expansions were often framed in religious terms, but they also carried political, economic, and imperial motives. Historian Hugh Kennedy, in his work The Great Arab Conquests, documents how early Islamic expansion fused religious zeal with strategic conquest. Over centuries, jihad became layered: spiritual duty, social reform, political control, empire building. What began as a personal or communal religious duty transformed into statecraft and conquest. By the time the impulse reached West Africa, it carried more than faith, it carried power, identity, and ambition. As Islam spread steadily across North Africa through trade, not just war, West Africa encountered a new cultural and religious influence. The earliest Muslim clerics reached Gao, Katsina, Kanem Bornu, Timbuktu. Through merchants, scholars, and royalty, Islam blended with local traditions. For centuries, it was peaceful, mostly. But by the 17th and 18th centuries, Islamic reform movements began sweeping across the Sahel. Scholars describe a rising wave of movements calling for Islamic purity. And one of those waves would soon crash violently into the heart of what is now Nigeria. the late 18th century, the call to jihad reached the Sahel. In present-day northern Nigeria, a Fulani Islamic scholar named Usman Dan Fodio, born 1754 in Gobi, Hausaland, began preaching for reform. He criticized local Hausa rulers for corruption, un-Islamic practices, and injustice. According to Murray Last, author of the Sokoto Caliphate, Fodio's message was simple: purify the faith, reform society, and establish rule by the Quran and Hadith. Initially, he and his followers sought peaceful reform, but persecution and repression by Hausa rulers escalated. By 1804, after repeated attempts on his life and harassment of his community, Dan Fodio declared a jihad, not just spiritual but military. It wasn't a small uprising, it was a war that overthrew Hausa kingdom and reshaped ethnic power. By 1808, the old kingdom of Gobi fell. Across Hausaland, including Katsina, Kano, Zaria, Zamfara, new emirates under Fulani rule emerged. The Sokoto Caliphate, one of the largest pre-colonial states in African history, was born. Former rulers exiled, Muslim law instituted, Islamic courts established. Islam became not just a faith, but state, law, identity, and political order. Bello, Abdullahi, and dozens of Fulani commanders expanded the caliphate through dozens of military campaigns. Hundreds of thousands were displaced. Communities were Islamized. Traditional religions and some Christian groups were pushed violently aside. This is not an opinion. This is documented in books like The Sokoto Caliphate by Murray Last, Reform and Rebellion in Northern Nigeria by M.G. Smith. The echoes of this 1804 movement still shape the political and religious landscape of northern Nigeria today. The Sokoto Caliphate's impact was more than political. It reshaped identities. It defined power. It redrew social maps. For many communities, it meant new rulers, new laws, new religious authorities. For others, a loss of autonomy, heritage, sometimes forced assimilation. When colonial powers arrived, British in the early 20th century, they found a unified political religious structure under Sokoto. Emirates, Sharia courts, Muslim administrators. They used indirect rule, maintaining emirates but co-opting them into colonial governance. This preserved the religious political order long after Sokoto's fall. After independence in 1960, northern elites, often with roots tracing back to Sokoto, and Fulani aristocracy occupied many power positions. Over decades, grievances grew among non-Muslim, non-Hausa, Fulani communities, especially in the Middle Belt, over marginalization, land rights, cultural identity, political underrepresentation. These old histories of conquest, dominance, assimilation became the silent, buried fault lines. Lines that would later fracture under pressure, resource scarcity, population growth, climate change, political exclusion. (1960) Nigeria gains independence. A nation of hundreds of ethnicities, of different tongues, faiths, dreams, but united in hope for a new dawn. But old legacies did not vanish with colonial flags. The memory of empires, conquests, religious political dominance, these simmered beneath the surface. Just 6 years later, in 1966, coups and counter-coups shattered the fragile calm. Christians in the north were targeted, massacres erupted, Easterners fled, thousands died. The fear of domination by a northern Islamic elite filled minds. Then came 1967, the breakaway of Biafra, a brutal war. Over 1 million civilians lost to hunger, disease, and bullets. Entire communities erased, families broken, dreams shattered. The war ended in 1970 with a promise: no victor, no vanquished. But for many, the wounds remained. The sense of betrayal, and marginalization among ethnic minorities, among non-Hausa, non-Fulani, among Christian communities in the Middle Belt and the South. After the war, Nigeria rebuilt new constitutions, military coups, returns to civil rule, oil wealth, economic booms and busts. But underlying that facade of progress, old inequalities persisted. Northern political power and dominance endured. The structure inherited from the old emirates and the Sokoto legacy enabled many northern Muslims to occupy powerful posts in government, military, civil service, and other strategic institutions in the country. Meanwhile, communities in the Middle Belt, farmers, fisherfolk, small-town Christians felt increasingly marginalized. Their lands used for grazing, their voices unheard, their farms threatened by expanding cattle herds. Cultural identity began to fray. By the 1980s to 90s, desertification and climate change pressured grazing patterns. Farmers complained, conflicts flared, but with low population density and weak policing, these often simmered, unresolved, buried, and bitter. By the turn of the century, Nigeria faced new threats, not from state actors, but from an extremist ideologies, poverty, and disillusionment. In 2002 in Maiduguri, a radical group emerged, one calling itself as defenders of a more extreme interpretation of Islam, rejecting Western education, secularism, and democratic governance. This was Boko Haram. Under the leadership of its founder, Mohammed Yusuf, and later his hardline successor, Abubakar Shekau, Boko Haram began a deadly insurgency. Churches bombed, villages razed, civilians killed. In 2014, Boko Haram shocked the world, abducting 276 schoolgirls in Chibok and the Iyaya bomb blast. These two events changed everything: global outrage, international aid, and military interventions. Yet despite these efforts, terrorists adapted, splitting into factions like Islamic State West Africa Province, YNSWAP, local bandits, and armed gangs. Rural communities, weakly policed zones, and remote camps all became breeding grounds for terror. And the Middle Belt, with its simmering land resource conflicts, became a fertile ground for new kind of violence. Herder-farmer clashes, community raids, kidnappings for ransom, and many more. To understand 2025 Nigeria, you must understand the Middle Belt, a place Nigerians used to call home, a place where different tribes live side by side, sharing land, culture, and hope. But today, it is also the place where some of the most painful chapters of Nigeria's insecurity are being written. This is not the North. This is not the South. This is the heart of Nigeria, the buffer zone, the meeting point, the melting point. Historians like Toyin Falola describe it as West Africa's fault line. And it is here that the country's deepest wounds have opened. The states that make up the Middle Belt are Benue, Plateau, Nasarawa, Kogi, Niger, Kwara, Adamawa, Taraba, and the Federal Capital Territory, Abuja. For decades, these states were known for farming, peace, and diversity. Christian majority tribes like the Tiv, Idoma, Igala, Birom, Jukun, Nupe, Mumuye, Tarok, Bakama, Kuteb, Mada, Alago, Egon, and many more lived with their Muslim neighbors without fear. But something shifted, slowly, quietly, violently. Nigeria is constitutionally a secular state, meaning no religion should dominate governance. But in the early 2000s, 12 states in northern Nigeria adopted Sharia law. And in the Middle Belt, Sharia became deeply enforced in parts of Kwara, Niger, and Adamawa. And this is where the fear began for many communities. Because even though these states were mixed, Even though Christians were many, Sharia brought a shift in power, in culture, and in how people lived. It brought tension, and that tension would later boil over into pain. Many of these communities saw the rise of Islamic influence, some peacefully, some through pressure, and some through violence. And today people ask hard questions. How did whole villages that were once Christian become almost entirely Muslim? What happened in the night? What happened in the silence? No one wants to say it out loud, but many believe the answer lies in the waves of attacks. And then came the attacks of 2024 and 2025, the deadliest in years. Here are just a few. 1. Plateau State, Christmas Eve Massacre, December 24th to 25th, 2023. Over 200 killed across Bokos and Bakan Lady, entire villages leveled. 2. Benue, multiple raids in 2024 and 2025 communities in Guma, Ukum, Logo, dozens killed in night attacks. 3. Niger State, recurring bandit raids 2024 to 2025, kidnapping of students in Kuchi and other areas. 4. Kogi State, 2024 attacks in Omala, LJ villages banned, families executed. 5. Kaduna, Southern Kaduna is culturally middle belt. Frequent attacks in 2024 to 2025 in Kaura, Zango Kataf, Kauru. 6. Kwara, church attack 2025. A church attacked during service in the Ifelodun area. Worshippers injured, homes burned. 7. Kebbi and Niger, schoolgirl kidnappings 2025. Another wave of female students abducted, echoing Chibok, Dapchi, Yari. 8. Niger State, Brigadier General murdered 2025. A senior army officer ambushed and killed in an attack on a military convoy. The pattern is clear. The map is clear. The dates are clear. Almost every major attack since the beginning of 2025 has happened in the Middle Belt. This is not random. This is not scattered. This is a belt being squeezed. The Middle Belt is rich in mineral resources, and many Nigerians believe the violence is connected to the vast mineral resources of the Middle Belt. And yes, minerals attract greed. But when you step back, when you look closely, when you study the pattern, the language, the targets, the timing, you see something deeper. A struggle over land, identity, and religion. A pattern that mirrors the stages of jihadic expansion described in classical texts. Not speculation, not conspiracy. Just patterns repeating themselves across history. For better understanding of the Middle Belt, we will make a separate video dedicated to explaining everything you need to know about the Middle Belt and its geography. So make sure you are subscribed to the channel so you don't miss out. For years, Nigerians have debated the balance between religion, justice, and political power. And few cases illustrate this tension more sharply than the story of Sandy Jackson, a farmer from Kodomti community, Numan local government area, Adamawa. On 27th January 2015, while working in his farm, he was attacked by a herdsman, later identified in court records as Ado Buba Baworo. Jackson overpowered the attacker. During the struggle, the man died. Jackson said he acted in self-defense. The Adamawa High Court convicted Jackson and sentenced him to death. The Court of Appeal affirmed that judgment. And on 7th March 2025, the Nigerian Supreme Court, by majority decision, upheld the death sentence. The court concluded Jackson's use of force exceeded what it called reasonable self-defense. The decision provoked strong public reaction. Human rights lawyers, civil society activists, and many ordinary Nigerians called it a miscarriage of justice. Arguing a farmer defending his life and land should not face execution. Critics pointed to the court's rejection of the self-defense plea and called for mercy and legal reform. Why does this matter for our story? Because it feeds a broader conversation about religion and power in Nigeria. The country's constitution declares it a secular state, yet since 1999, 12 states in the north have implemented Sharia to varying degrees. In some places, including parts of states that touch the Middle Belt, Sharia institutions, Hizbah enforcement and religious courts influence everyday policing and dispute resolution. That uneven legal patchwork shapes how people experience justice and how they interpret court rulings. And questions continue to arise. Why does Nigeria have a national mosque funded and recognized at the federal level, but no national cathedral? Why do the Naira notes carry Arabic inscriptions, a language not recognized as an official language of the country? Why do some elements of Nigeria's military insignia and uniforms contain Arabic script when Arabic is largely associated with Islam and not with the nation's indigenous cultures? These are not random observations. They form a pattern that many Nigerians have noticed for decades. A pattern where religious symbolism appears in state institutions without national consensus. A pattern where one religious identity seems to have more visibility and institutional acceptance than others. And when you combine this with cases like Sunday Jackson, where a man who defended himself in a dangerous attack was sentenced to death under religious law, it fuels the argument that religion, politics, and justice in Nigeria are not separate, even though the Constitution says they should be. This is the central tension. Nigeria calls itself a secular state, but in practice, religion still holds political weight in ways that are hard to ignore. And each of these examples, from court judgments to currency inscriptions, forces Nigerians to ask uncomfortable but necessary questions about equality, identity, and the true shape of the nation's future. If Nigeria is to heal, then it must face its shadows, not with vengeance, but with justice, empathy, and unity. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to like and subscribe for more videos.